Welcome to the 10 podcast where we teach, empower, and nurture minds. I am your host, Jacine. In this episode, we're going to be exploring why it matters for children to understand the brain and how it works. We'll be breaking down some basic brain science, discussing how it helps children to thrive confidently and how it can help children to regulate their emotions. We will also be sharing ways parents, caregivers, and educators can introduce these important concepts to children in a simple yet effective way. Let's dive in. Understanding the brain is not just for scientists, it is for all of us, especially those working with children and also parents. When we understand the brain, it helps us to be able to communicate that understanding to children. The more we understand the brain, the more we can help children handle their emotions, challenges, and relationships in a healthy way. So let's start by looking at the brain itself and how it actually works. But we're going to keep it simple. Think of the brain as the control center of everything we think, feel, and do. There are several parts of the brain, but we're only going to look at two important parts of the brain that are really important for children, especially when it comes to managing their emotions. One of the parts of the brain that involve in managing emotions is the amygdala. You can think of the amygdala as the brain's alarm system. It is in charge of detecting danger and triggering that fight or flight response. When children feel scared, angry, or anxious, their amygdala is the one firing up. It's saying something's wrong. I'm not feeling right. Something needs to happen. There needs to be an intervention. So your amygdala is that alarm system that tells you that something isn't right. Now let's talk about the next important part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which sits right behind the forehead. This is the part of the brain that helps with thinking, reasoning, and making decisions. It is like the brain control tower. It helps children to manage their emotion, think before they act, and stay calm in difficult situations. The tricky part is the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed in kids. This is why when a child has a meltdown or act impulsively, it is not because they're being difficult or being rude or doing it on purpose. It's because their brain is still learning how to manage those big feelings, those big emotions. And there's a very important relationship between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The relationship between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex is really important. You can imagine the amygdala as the kind of emotion gas pedal, while the prefrontal cortex is the brake that helps children to slow down and think things through. The more developed and stronger a child's prefrontal cortex becomes, the better they'll be at managing those intense emotions, those big feelings that can come from the amygdala. Like we said before, the amygdala is the one that triggers those emotions and let you know there's something wrong, I need help. And the prefrontal cortex is the one that step in and help those children to calm down. So, why is it important for kids and the adults in their life to know about the importance of the brain and how it works? Well, if children understand how the brain works, it can actually help them manage their emotions better. When children learn about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, it is like giving them a map of understanding their own emotional world. They begin to realize, oh, when I'm really angry or scared, that's just my amygdala talking. It's taking over. But if I take a deep breath, I can help my prefrontal cortex kick in and make things better. Then I'll make better choices. Knowing this can be incredibly empowering for children. It helps them to see that emotions aren't just something that happens out of nowhere, but more so, they are something that can be understood and even managed with practice. And that can bring us to a really exciting concept, which is the neuroplasticity. This is a big word, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple and really cool. So, neuroplasticity means that the brain is constantly growing and changing. In other words, just like kids can get stronger by exercising their muscles, they can also train their brain to handle emotions better. When children practice calming techniques like taking a deep breath, counting from 1 to 10, or even just recognizing when they are starting to feel upset, they can actually help their brain to build stronger connection in the prefrontal cortex. Over time, with practice, these connections can get stronger, which means that they'll be better at managing those big emotions the next time they come up. This is where the concept of practice makes progress really rings through. I know right now you might be saying, what does understanding the brain has to do with confidence and self-esteem? But understanding the brain helps children to build confidence and self-esteem by giving them that tool to manage emotions and recognize that their brains can grow and adapt. When children learn about the concept of neuroplasticity and how their brain regulates feelings, they feel more in control of their reactions and less overwhelmed by challenges. This fosters a growth mindset where mistakes are seen as opportunity for learning rather than failure. As a result, children can be more likely to approach challenges with confidence, improve their problem solving skills, and even develop a healthier sense of self worth. Yes, so building self esteem and confidence is connected to understanding how the brain works because it helps children to discover their emotions and their triggers and what they can do to calm themselves. Let's have a look at this. So, for example, if children learn from a young age that their brain are flexible and it can change, it gives them a growth mindset. They won't feel stuck in their emotions. Instead, they'll understand that they can improve how they handle things. It's also give parents and teachers a great way to frame emotional challenges. When a child is struggling, it's an opportunity to teach them that their brain is still learning and it's okay to have big feelings as long as we work on managing them. So, what can parents and teachers do to help introduce these concepts to children? The first step is to start by having conversations about the brain. You don't need to dive into deep neuroscience. Simple explanations work best. You might say something like, when you feel really mad, that's your amygdala talking. But we can help your prefrontal cortex to take over by calming you down. So these are simple conversations. Every time you get an opportunity when a child is upset, use those opportunity to introduce these concepts. It is also important to introduce calming strategies that can help kids slow down their emotional reaction. Deep breathing, counting, or even just asking them to take a moment to pause can make a huge difference. When these techniques are explained as a way to train the brain, kids feel more motivated to try them. You can also find child friendly books or videos that talk about emotions and feelings in a simple way. The more kids know, the more they'll be able to make sense of what's going on inside them. And that's the key to helping them to grow emotionally resilient. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you've learned something. Remember, understanding how the brain works isn't just for scientists, it is for anyone who wants to help children grow emotionally and mentally strong. By introducing these ideas early, we're giving children the tools they need to understand and regulate their emotion for the rest of their life. For now, I encourage you to start talking about the brain with your children in your life. It might just make a big difference, bigger than you expect. Thank you for listening to the 10 podcast where we teach, empower, and nurture minds.